Welcome to the March edition of Ask the Athletic Director. I'm Andy MacWilliams, and with me is Xavier AD Greg Christopher. Greg, great news on the swimming front. We don't talk a lot about swimming. Those guys work so hard. They deserve any recognition and all they get, but they're the champions, the men of the Big East.
Yeah, really proud, Andy. Absolutely, our first, Xavier's first Big East championship, and couldn't happen to a nicer group of guys. Both the women and the men had terrific championships, and thrilled to be able to recognize them tomorrow at the Creighton game, and there'll always be a first in Xavier's first Big East championship, and we got it in men's swimming. The other thing is, it's kind of neat that of the 3 schools that joined the Big East, we were the first to get one of those Big East championships, so always competitive in something.
You know, the Reds are on the radio in Goodyear, so baseball is with us, and with this terrible winter we've had, it revitalizes the soul. But Xavier baseball is off to a really good start also.
Yeah, they had a great first weekend, and then followed that up with being able to get a win at a nationally ranked North Carolina team. They're on the road again this weekend down in Tennessee, which is good because we've got snow coming again. But Scott runs a great program, and it'll be fun to watch them develop as the spring unfolds.
You were there at Madison Square Garden when Xavier played well and beat St. John's the other night, and Madison Square Garden has undergone a huge renovation. They put a lot of money into it, and they sent the New York Rangers on the road for about 4 weeks at the start of the hockey season. What are your impressions of MSG, the new look MSG?
I hadn't been in Madison Square Garden for probably more than a decade. Had been there for a few events until this past week, and it's amazing what they've done. It's might be probably the nicest arena I've ever been in. It's remarkable what you can do with $1 billion.
Even in New York.
Yeah, the fan experience and what they've done is very impressive. It's interesting that they spent all their money on the fan amenities because the back shop is still, frankly, rather rough in places. But what the fans will see between the food, the other amenities, the various suites and club areas, let alone their video board, it's all impressive. So great building, always has had that mystique to it. Certainly hasn't lost any of that. They do also a really great job. If our fans can take a few minutes just to walk the arena, which I did before our game, they do a terrific job of telling the story of Madison Square Garden and the history of some of the events that have been there. So, all in all, it's again, the history and the mystique, great building. It's neat to be a part of it.
There'll be a large contingent of Xavier fans, people from Cincinnati and environs making the trip to Madison Square Garden. The ticket sales really rallied.
Yeah, they really did, and this is hats off to our fans, which again shows the support that our teams have. Early on it was publicized that every Big East school was going to have to sell 750 tickets, and we had traditionally sold about 150 tickets or so to the A10 tournaments. We've sold almost 800, just shy of 800 tickets for the Big East tournament, so it's going to be a loud and proud contingent there in New York.
Xavier fans have always traveled well, and I know that lately Xavier has reinvigorated those alumni gatherings at road basketball games. I was at the one at Indianapolis on the Butler campus, but you've had good ones in Chicago and in Milwaukee.
We have, Andy. I'm not sure we'll do them for every road game. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to do one midweek in New York. But I would say for about 2/3 of our road games, we've tried to do the pregame events, and they're really well coordinated because it's not just an athletics message or not just an alumni message. Admissions is plugged into. We've had prospective students there, and we've made the commitment that going forward, we'll do these as often as it makes sense and where it makes sense on weekends, and we'll also include the team at least once a year. We did that in Chicago this year because the timing worked out well, and that was really well received. So we'll include the team at one away and then one home game, which is tomorrow, Creighton, where the team will be part of the reception after the game. So at the end of the day, it's a way to engage our fans, engage our alumni, engage prospective students, plug the team in where we can, and they seem to work well.
The Xavier Creighton game, complete sellout, and the decision was made to go above and beyond, and for the first time ever, standing room only. What went into that?
It's been funny, actually. In the last 24 hours, a couple of people have shot notes to me. I guess some folks at Creighton are taking credit that you know, they think that because of Creighton coming to town, we're doing standing room only, and that's honestly been amusing to see that. We just, I guess we had never asked the fire marshal before. So, look, Xavier's had a tremendous history of sellouts here in the Cintas Center. So there have been a lot of opportunities we could have sold standing room only tickets, but we asked the question for the first time this year, put together a plan, fire marshal approved it, and we're going to sell standing room only tickets. It's not rocket science, and it's not tied just to Creighton as much as they may think that.
Greg, in your past, you've been involved in the NCAA selection process. You were the chairman of the women's selection committee, representing Bowling Green not long ago, and we're getting to selection week. What is it like? What are some of the highlights, or the as a member of the selection committee when you're on the inside? Is it like 24/7? Is it all encompassing?
It is very intense, and you know, it's a bunker mentality. And we've got somebody in the Big East, Bruce Rasmussen from Creighton, who does a terrific job. He's on the men's committee now, so we've got a voice in the room. Would be a good way to put it. And Bruce has, for those who don't know his background, tremendous history and as a coach before he was an athletics director. But the two committees, men's and women's, show up in Indianapolis. They're there a week. They're in the same hotel, or at least they were when I was on the committee. And it's very much a bunker mentality. It's very collaborative, exhaustive. The amount of data the committee has to work with is overkill in a lot of ways. And then you've got 10 people on each committee, and they all make decisions differently. The same way, if we sat and looked at, you know, the 35 teams or so that are in play, you might look at them a little bit differently than I would. But the criteria are pretty straightforward. If you read Lenardi and some of that stuff, you know, they're out there, whether it's strength of schedule, RPI, you know, there's about 15 different data points that people use. And you might think strength of schedule is more important, and I might think RPI is more important, and that's the discussion that takes place. The focal point is that week when they're in Indianapolis. The reality is that's been playing out since November 1. And these 10 committee members have probably watched 150 to 200 basketball games each to get to this point. And each committee person has 2 or 3 conferences that they have to know, they have to be locked in on what's happening. For example, we have a Big East committee member who knows the Big East backward and forward. So that's as short of answer as I can give you to something that we could talk for an hour about on what goes in. Fascinating process, not always pretty, ultimately democratic, and I think ultimately they make the right decisions.
So it's a lot more than just showing up in Indianapolis, eating ice cream sundaes, and digesting great reams of information about teams sort of statically. There's a lot of, it's like a second job for you guys on that.
It is, and you know, Xavier lived it with Mike being on the committee, just how time intensive it was. But it's also very rewarding because it's a very human process, and some of the sports go straight by numbers. You know, there's hockey, which I lived, you know, at Bowling Green. Hockey, they do their selection simply on RPI. They just literally go down the list, and here's the cutoff, and you're either in or you're not. No human element to it at all. So each sport's a little different. Basketball, you know, again, the human drama around the selection process probably has as much public interest as the games themselves do.
Greg, thanks. And
thank you.
March is the best month of the year if you throw out the weather. I mean, with basketball, so I'm sure you'll all have a lot of fun watching the Xavier men and where they end up and what results. And we'll be back soon with another edition of Ask the Athletic Director.